The Pixel 4 XL is a very good phone. I've been using the one that Google sent me for over the past month now as my personal device, and overall I've really enjoyed my experience with it, and I think that a lot of people out there just overreacted to certain aspects of this phone. So in this video I'm going to go over why I think some people overreacted to this phone and what specific parts of the phone they overreacted to. I'm going to go over my favorite things about the Google Pixel 4 XL, some things I don't like about the phone, and then ultimately whether or not you should consider getting one, especially if you're a fan of the Google Assistant and taking great photos. Let's dive in. Now, I've been watching a lot of other YouTubers go absolutely negative on this phone, and it's left me a bit perplexed. Like, did we get the same phone to review? Because my experience with the Pixel XL just does not match the amount of critique and negativity that has been launched at this phone. Now, there are legitimate concerns and downsides to this phone, especially when it comes to battery life and the video recording options, but especially for people who do video like YouTubers do, that's actually a pretty important feature on a phone. I would say the ultra-wide camera missing on the Pixel 4, that doesn't bother me as much, but oh my gosh, like the amount of negativity towards this phone just, I don't know, at least coming from my perspective, it does not match the experience of the phone. I mean, some YouTubers are calling this thing a disaster. It's not. And I think that they should avoid just writing clickbaity titles like that to try to get a reaction out of people. Dieter over at The Verge, I think, comes closest to summing up this phone correctly, and I've put his review in the video description below. Dieter's point was basically that the Pixel has never just been about the hardware specs, but about the software combined with the hardware. When people are simply comparing the hardware specs of the Pixel 4 XL to other Android phones, they're not telling the entire story of the Pixel experience. And that's because not all Android software is the same amongst all Android devices. Google has put a ton of work into the software, making the best use of the hardware in this phone, and it shows, especially with the camera, Face Unlock, Google Assistant, and Screen Attention, which is one of my new favorite features where the phone won't turn off the screen when it notices that you're still looking at the screen, which is handy for reading long articles at night. With the 90Hz display, Android 10 feels incredibly snappy. The 6.3-inch OLED display makes it look great. It has accurate colors and bases its white balance on your ambient lighting environment thanks to a new ambient EQ feature. And Face Unlock feels ridiculously fast. By default, it'll bypass the lock screen, which helps contribute to its speed, and the Soli radar helps turn on the Face Unlock feature when it senses your hand reaching for the phone, which also causes it to unlock faster. The phone's construction feels premium, looks similar to the iPhone, and has improved aesthetics on the front as well, bucking the notch trend by not having the Face Unlock sensors intrude on the display's area, which is a real pet peeve of mine and why I like the design of the Pixel 4 and Pixel 4 XL better than the iPhone 11s. The camera is fantastic on this phone. You're going to be blown away by the pictures that this thing can take. While it doesn't have a wide-angle lens, the super zoom feature and the shadows and exposure controls with the Live HDR Plus view are much more useful in creating better shots. Plus, the phone's HDR Plus has been enhanced to help identify the correct white balance for your photos automatically. And where this really showed up in my experience is when I was out in the forest taking photos of all the brilliant fall colors. Now, unfortunately, where the Pixel 4 XL's camera falls short for me is with video. Now, I'm not as concerned with it not being able to do 4K at 60 frames per second. I mean, sure, that's a nice to have, but I typically just shoot 4K at 30 frames per second. But the biggest downside to me has actually been with the video quality. Compared to the video quality on my old iPhone, the Pixel 4's video quality just seems slightly off. It doesn't look as good with the colors it captures as my iPhone does, and I just haven't been as impressed with the footage quality I get thus far. Moving on, let's talk about Google Photos. The Google Photos integration throughout the entire OS is really nice. On iOS, I always found it frustrating when I was in Instagram or Snapchat and I wanted to use a photo that was in my Google Photos account. On iOS, there's no way to link those apps to your Google Photos account, where with the Pixel and Android, you can do that throughout the entire OS and almost any app. So that's definitely an advantage of the Pixel over iOS. Now, speaking of Google Photos, one thing to keep in mind with the Pixel 4 for Pixel customers is that Google no longer offers unlimited storage of your photos and videos in their original quality on Google Photos. So just keep that in mind. The Google Assistant on this phone is wicked fast for a lot of tasks like navigating on the phone, though you'll need to make sure that you have continued conversation turned on in order to do that. I find that the Assistant is faster at opening apps, turning on different things like the phone's flashlight, and all around is a great improvement over the Assistant experience on my Google Pixel 3a. One of the newest pieces of tech in this phone is a tiny little radar chip that gives us the feature Motion Sense. Now, it seems like most people haven't found Motion Sense that useful. But when I'm listening to music through my phone and its screen is off and it's on my desk, I actually find the swipe music gestures to work really well and actually be pretty useful. I can skip a song without having to look down at my phone or touch it. Motion Sense will also quiet alarms and phone calls when it senses your hand coming towards the phone, which is another nice touch. Now let's talk about some of the downsides with this phone, and first, let's talk about battery life. The Pixel 4 XL's battery life is fine. Like, it gets me through the entire day, and that's probably what you want out of a phone. But where the caveat comes here is its battery life is worse than my iPhone 8 Plus's battery life. Like, when I used my iPhone 8 Plus, I was used to seeing about 30% battery left over by the time I put it on my nightstand to charge. With the Pixel 4 XL, I'm typically seeing anywhere from 20 to 15% battery left over by the time it's charging on my nightstand. So that is definitely worse than the experience I was coming from. But at the end of the day, for most days, the Pixel 4 XL's battery life for me, and I think for a lot of people out there who are just regular phone users who aren't heavy users, like, the Pixel 4 XL's battery is going to get you through the day okay. It may be kind of closer than what you're used to, especially if you're an iPhone user, but it'll definitely be okay. I do really like that Android at least gives you an estimated time of when the battery will run out. So at least it's trying to quell some of that battery anxiety, but still, no way to cut it. Google needs to do a better job optimizing their software and hardware for battery life, especially when you compare it to what Apple's been able to achieve. Another downside I've run into is when streaming media over the Bluetooth in my car. With the Pixel 4 XL, I've noticed more blips in the Bluetooth audio and actually on my Pixel Buds as well. Now, this did not start off when I first got the phone, so I'm hoping this is just a glitch that cropped up and that Google will hopefully solve, but it has happened somewhat consistently over the past couple of weeks now, so I did want to mention it. The last downside I want to point out is not specifically about the 4 XL itself, but the entire Pixel ecosystem. Google has been getting better with their hardware over the years, and aside from the battery life issues, the Pixel 4 XL is probably the best thing that they've produced so far. But while Google is great at software services and its software services ecosystem, it just doesn't have a complete hardware ecosystem yet for mobile devices. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's no Pixel Watch that can compete with the Apple Watch, and there's no real competitor yet to Apple's AirPods. It's obvious that Google is trying to get to that completed hardware ecosystem like Apple has now that it's announced that it's acquiring Fitbit and it's releasing new wireless Pixel Buds in the spring. But until they successfully complete this ecosystem, Apple's walled garden is going to continue to entice people to switch and jump over that wall, and it's going to entice people to stay put inside the walled garden. And this brings me to my closing thoughts on the Pixel 4 XL and the state of the Pixel line in general. The question that's been in my mind a lot over the past month is who exactly are these phones really for? They're not trying to cater to the spec nerds, and it's unclear how committed Google actually is in getting people to switch from an iPhone to a Pixel, especially when you consider that Google's own hardware ecosystem is still missing a pretty key product. So the best answer I have to the question of who should buy a Pixel are fans of Google products, consumers who want the latest Android software updates and the cleanest version of Android you can get, users who want the absolute best camera you can get on an Android phone, or adventurous iPhone users who don't care about Apple's hardware ecosystem and want to try something new. If you're in one of those groups, I think you're going to be really happy with the Pixel 4 XL. Google has just done a fantastic job overall with this phone, and I've just had a blast using it as my personal device for over the past month. I mean, the camera is amazing, and they've done some really smart things with the Face Unlock technology and the Google Assistant. It's just such a shame that the battery life of this phone isn't as competitive with the other flagship phones of 2019. Well, that's it for our 1 month later review of the Google Pixel 4 XL. If you like this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button below and subscribe to the channel to see more Pixel and Google related videos like this one. For 6 months later, I'm Josh Tedder. Thanks for watching.